Hello! We are live once again. It's the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, the final Grand Prix before the summer break. How are we all doing? How are we all feeling? Who's in the chat? Hello, Lofi. Sally's in there, of course. Boopy Boop is in there. Dark One Dia. How's it going? Shivram. Hello. Right, let's get straight into it. There's a load to talk about. I know that I only come, or go live just before the Grand Prix / qualifying begins. And usually I feel like half an hour is a good enough time to talk through everything that's going on. But this weekend, just because I think everyone's getting their ducks in order before the summer break, there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot to get through before we get into it. How are we all doing? What a time to join. Well, Daybench, it's all right. Don't worry, there are 10 more Grand Prix after the summer break to get hyped about, including Singapore. Favorite track behind my head right there. Hello from Perth, Phoenix Star. How's it going? Been here since Suzuka. Oh, the Japanese Grand Prix. What a Grand Prix it was. Hello, Dre. Hello, Flying2572. Vincent Walters. How's it going? Bobby is playing. Lennon Madsen from Denmark. Hello, Tristan. Johan, I'm running out of time. Slowline Train Spotting, how's it going? Susie, or Sussy, Lopi in there as well. Hello. Yuki gonna start in Hungary. Yeah, he's taking a big drop, is Yuki Tsunoda. Let's jump straight into it, right? Let's first and foremost talk about everything that has happened since Hungary, because it's been a little bit of a slower week on the channel. Apologies, I did pop a little bit on the community tab for those of you that were wondering, where are the long form videos kind of dipping off to at the moment. But I did also pop onto the community tab a little bit about this. Esteban Ocon signs a multi-year deal with Haas. That is right. The Frenchman out of Alpine. We knew that after the Monaco Grand Prix. Now into a Haas seat for 2025, 2026, possibly even beyond, depending on how he does. We, of course, knew that Nico Hülkenberg was going to go to Stake Sauber. That's going to then become Audi. So he's lined up there. And Esteban Ocon is replacing Kevin Magnussen alongside Ollie Bearman. And as I said, I threw it to you guys over on the community tab to kind of get your thoughts, feelings, first reactions to it. And it was mixed, to say the least. A lot of people feeling bad for Bearman. Like Crimson Monarch here, poor Bearman, the boy is dead. And there's kind of a little bit of me that feels the same. Obviously, Esteban Ocon has not got on overly well with a lot of his teammates. But then if you kind of flip that on its head a little bit, and you look at Esteban Ocon's teammates throughout his time in Formula One, you're looking at Hülkenberg's, you're looking at Perez's, you're looking at Ricciardo's, you're looking at Fernando Alonso's, Pierre Gasly. He has had some very, very experienced teammates alongside him. And up until the Gasly kind of coming together at Alpine in the last couple of years, it has always felt like Esteban Ocon was the number 2. He was clear number 2 to Daniel Ricciardo. I think that's the only season you can say Esteban Ocon was comfortably beaten, was that season alongside Daniel Ricciardo. Apart from that, he's kind of held his own against those really tough teammates. And I think that's been one of the things that has pushed this side of Esteban Ocon that we've seen, in that he has always kind of been trying to prove himself and trying to be the number 1 and say, I'm here to stay. I'm Alpine's driver. I should be the future of the team. Don't think about Daniel Ricciardo. Don't think about Fernando Alonso. He wants it to be him. Whereas now, I think actually, as much as people are worried about going in alongside a rookie driver, like Juicy Lip the same, somebody help Bearman, Ocon is not that driver, Bearman going to have a rough rookie season, Bearman's baptism of fire. I actually think this could be the opposite. And I know, want to be contentious, playing devil's advocate here. I want to think about this in terms of Esteban Ocon going into the team, Bearman and going into the team, where they're at in their Formula One careers. Obviously, Ollie Bearman coming in, he's a rookie. Obviously, he's had that one race in a Ferrari, but he's also been linked to the Ferrari Academy for a very long time, done lots of testing for Haas, more testing coming up for Haas later on in the season as well. And it does just feel like Esteban Ocon is finally that clear number one, right? He finally gets to be, I am the number one, I'm alongside a rookie, I'm going to try and help the rookie, rather than being alongside an established driver that he needs to outdo or outscore or outperform. So I think we actually will see a new side of Esteban Ocon. I don't think it's as bad as people are saying in terms of Ollie Behrman's baptism of fire and going in and thinking, oh, this is going to be really, really bad. The positives here for me, I think Esteban Ocon is a better driver than Kevin Magnussen. Whether he's better than Nico Hülkenberg, I think Nico Hülkenberg's in a really purple patch right now. Esteban Ocon, though, has been continuing to show he is worthy of a Formula One seat. And he is a really, really solid midfield driver that on his day can absolutely fly. I'm thinking Saudi Arabia a couple of years ago. I think, Saudi Arabia even last season as well. Then we've got the Hungarian Grand Prix that he won. Like, he does have a few Grand Prix in him, the Monaco podium, where he does just manage to grab that Alpine by the horns and put in a stunning, stunning performance. So I feel like Esteban Ocon to Haas is actually a really, really good move for them. I do think he's an upgrade on Kevin Magnussen, and I don't think they will have the problems with him being a bad teammate, because Ollie Behrman is a completely different type of teammate to anyone we've seen him alongside. Like, you look at all of Esteban Ocon's teammates, they've all been a very, very different kind of caliber of driver, a very, very different a very, very different driver for Esteban Ocon to be up against and up alongside. So I think it's actually a positive, but that may be just me, because there's been a lot of people kind of pointing at Esteban Ocon maybe not being the best choice for the Haas team moving forwards. But I'd love to know your guys' point of views. Lance Stroll has entered the Olympics in the sport of spinning out, flying 257. Okay. Lots of people coming at Oscar. Will Joe or Logan have a seat? We'll get to that momentarily. Everybody's, 5-second penalty for Ocon, average F1 fan. Going to be great teammates. There you go. A little bit of positivity. Just don't be slow. Yeah, Ollie is going to be on the radio like, why is he so slow? I think that's the only thing, right? I think if Esteban Ocon isn't the faster teammate, because the way I'm looking at it is I think Esteban Ocon is going to be that team number one, at least for a good season or so, whilst Ollie Behrman finds his feet, gets into Formula One, and starts to find that pace that we know he does have underneath. If Ollie Behrman comes in and it's like 4 races and Ollie Behrman is outperforming Esteban Ocon, outscoring Esteban Ocon even in the Haas, then I feel like that's when you need to question it. But at least for now, I think it's a good move for Alpine and a good shout for them to get it in. Hello, Antonio, mate. How are you doing? Poor Ollie. I think it's too early to say poor Ollie. Maybe a little bit later down the line. Yes, I feel like Ollie Behrman, once Ollie Behrman finds his feet, and once Ollie Behrman starts to maybe outperform Esteban Ocon, then we could see it go a slightly different way. But for now, good deal, good choice on Haas's behalf. An upgrade on Kevin Magnussen, a good solid driver to get in, proper midfield driver that they want, that they need, and I think will actually help the team move forwards a little bit. That does then line us up like this so far. It is very quickly kind of falling into place in the last few weeks, isn't it? 5 spots left, still a quarter of the grid unknown for 2025, but a good chunk starting to take shape. Although there are now question marks around some of the drivers that are even confirmed. For instance, Sergio Perez up here. Is he going to be there? Is he even going to be there after the summer break? Is another question entirely that we won't get into right now. Again, kind of filling up the spaces, feeling this out. Now that Esteban Ocon is confirmed, I thought Esteban Ocon might be a good choice for Stake Sauber or Williams, to be fair as well. I felt like he was going to be in this lower pack of the grid, to be honest. But I feel like Haas have done really well to get hold of him. That then means he can't go to either of these two teams. So Williams now in a little bit of a weird situation where they are still holding out hope for Sainz. I feel like Sainz is still the number one choice for those two teams, Williams and Kick Sauber. They're waiting. whereas Haas didn't really have that connection to Carlos Sainz, so got that deal done for Esteban Ocon. I feel like Esteban Ocon was probably the second choice for those teams. So Haas has just been like, you know what? We're not going to get Carlos Sainz. We'll get in Esteban Ocon, who's everybody else's second choice, and we'll click him into gear right now. Carlos Sainz also being heavily linked with the Alpine setup, but I think just still waiting for this Mercedes seat. I think it's going to go to Kimi Antonelli, but I think that's what Carlos Sainz is kind of holding back on, waiting to see what happens there. Because Kimi Antonelli has another test for Mercedes at Spa, actually. He's got a couple of days of testing next week, I want to say, inside the Mercedes car. So we'll have to see how that goes for them. Carlos Sainz in the safety car for 2025. I feel like Carlos Sainz will get there, to be honest with you. Will get a seat somewhere. It's just, I feel like Carlos Sainz is holding out for a better seat. I feel like Carlos Sainz was kind of holding out for Red Bull, kind of holding out still for Mercedes. He does need to make a decision fairly swiftly, because as we're seeing, those seats are starting to fill up. But I feel like Alpine, Williams, Kick will all wait and see where Carlos Sainz goes first. The problem is they're now missing out on their second, third choices, because I feel like, as I said, Williams' second choice would have probably been Ocon. Kick Sauber's second choice would have probably been Ocon. He's now gone. Yuki Tsunoda, similar. I feel like a lot of teams would have had Yuki Tsunoda on their radar. Obviously, RB had that option to extend his contract, so they activated that to make sure that they could keep hold of him. Same with like Nico Hülkenberg. Nico Hülkenberg would have been a great option for all of the teams on the grid as just that second driver, maybe. Even at Mercedes, right? George Russell, Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg for a season if Kimi Antonelli then needs another year in Formula 2. Not a terrible choice, but he's now taken. And those second choice drivers behind Carlos Sainz are starting to be signed up elsewhere. I feel like we should also touch upon this. Binotto is back, baby. He is back on the Formula 1 grid. Well, not quite yet. He joins the Audi Formula 1 project. So we might see him around on the grid in 2025, around that kind of Kick Sauber team. But generally speaking, I think we'll have to wait until Audi fully come onto the grid in 2026 before we see him darting around. He's not like a team principal or anything like that. So we're not going to see him every single weekend like we did when he was at Ferrari. But I do think it's quite interesting that Audi have gone for the ex-Ferrari man, grabbed him while they can, and given him the opportunity to come in and work alongside that Audi project. Obviously, I did ask about this on the community tab as well, and as you would expect, there was a little bit of Ferrari banter going on. It's going to be an Audi masterclass. Drive to Survive, about to have a field day with this one. We know why Carlos Sainz won't sign with Audi. Of course, Carlos Sainz worked under Binotto at Ferrari, and they didn't have the best of times. Has been better since Fred Vasseur has been there. So maybe they're trying to go one way, and they're like, well, Carlos, you've worked with him before. He did a good job at Ferrari. I do think Binotto was good for Ferrari. There was just some underlying key issues that he couldn't really get to the bottom of. And because he was such an inside man, he didn't have the power to address those issues. Whereas Vasseur is kind of an outsider coming in, obviously a Frenchman rather than an Italian, gets to come into that team with a real outside perspective and has been able to make a lot more changes than Binotto has been able to. Memes are back on the grid, boys. Ariosto in there, of course. Hülkenberg never going to get that podium. I don't know. The Audi project, can't stand him. Should have hired Perez. Interesting. Audi confirmed has terrible strategies. I think that's the thing, right? We're thinking of Binotto. Binotto as a team principal was not what they wanted, but luckily he is not going to be the team principal at Audi. He is going to be working behind the scenes with their project. And actually, he was one of the guys that was very influential on making that Ferrari power unit as powerful as it was. Obviously, there were some contentious issues around it being illegal. We had some back and forth. Ferrari then changed it mid-season, but it's still, he was there. He was doing really good stuff. And you don't work your way up to being a team principal without, doing at least something throughout the team that makes you stand out and a part of that Ferrari process. Obviously, beyond that as well, talking of engines, Alpine have done it again. They've done it again. This is sort of almost breaking news, to be honest with you. It only came out yesterday, I think it was, that this was confirmed. Bruno Famin to move away from Alpine's Formula 1 division. This is with the news that Alpine, again, are moving closer and closer to kind of sacking off the Renault engines that they have used throughout their time in Formula One. And obviously, before they were Alpine, they were Renault. They are that Renault Works team. But it looks like now Bruno Famin's going to go. The Renault engine department is going to be not completely gotten rid of. They're going to move to other parts of where Alpine are also, part of WEC now. So they can move over to the hypercar stuff, or they can move over to the electric engines of, is it Nissan? I think it's Nissan that Renault also work alongside with. So I think they're going to kind of spread out the Formula One department in slightly different ways. And Famin is going to move across with that. Of course, being head of that engine development, he's going to move away from the Formula One division because they're not going to have a Formula One engine anymore. So Bruno Famin off, away, moving once again. It is another team principle that Alpine are losing in one way or another. I know he's still going to be part of Renault and Alpine in one way, but we're not going to see him trackside anymore. He's not going to be with Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon after the summer break. They are looking for a new team principal, and it looks like that Mercedes engine deal is basically going to be confirmed, because as much as they confirmed Renault engines beforehand and actually submitted all of the paperwork to have a Renault engine in 2026, actually now they're backtracking on that paperwork, getting rid of that department and moving towards using Mercedes engines. We'll see how that deal goes, and when that's confirmed, I will let you know. But for Alpine, obviously this season started absolutely horrendously. They have been able to move forwards in one way or another, mainly because they've been able to cut a lot of the weight of that Formula One car off. And they're now, the 8th fastest team on the grid, kind of looking at the Constructors' Championship. They've got 9 points on the board. They went through that really lovely stint. 4 races in a row where Gasly picked up points, sort of Monaco through to Austria, picked up 4 points finishes, a 10th place, a 9th place, a 9th place, and a 10th place for Pierre Gasly. In and amongst that, Esteban Ocon also picked up 2 points finishes in those 4 races back to back. So it was looking really positive for Alpine. It looked like they finally got back to being 5th, maybe even 6th fastest car on the Formula One grid. And then they're like, actually, no, let's just throw that all away. They've been really poor in the last 2 weekends. Obviously, Pierre Gasly with a did not start in Silverstone, and then another mechanical issue in Hungary. So we haven't been able to see what kind of race pace he's had. But even in qualifying, they've been pretty terrible, and it's looking tough once again at Alpine to really understand where they're going to go. What is up with Matt and Tommy reacting to the Belgian Grand Prix practice? I mean, they do that. Yeah, they always do that. Will Seb make a comeback? Absolutely not. No. Absolutely not. Okay, so as I said, that kind of gives us a position where, with Binotto coming back into Audi, maybe he has a little bit of a say who goes into that second seat. The connection with Carlos Sainz and Ferrari, maybe that'll be a turning point for him in the positive or the negative. And then also Famin moving away from Alpine, and Alpine effectively guaranteeing themselves Mercedes, or trying to guarantee themselves Mercedes engines for 2026 and beyond. That also, I think, will have an influence on who goes into that second Alpine seat, because they don't need that kind of all French connection that they've been going for with Ocon and Gasly. Is it going to be Doohan? Do they go with one of their juniors? Or because they're moving away from being a works team completely, do they kind of not, disband their driver academy, but do they kind of not care about that as much anymore and just go for the best driver that they can get hold of? Do they try and get Carlos Sainz and convince him, like, look, we are moving away from Renault. We are becoming a customer team of Mercedes. Look at what McLaren have been able to achieve in that short period of time with those Mercedes engines, but just with that Mercedes program being able to fully focus on just making the car quicker. Like, that is the one benefit of being a customer team nowadays, is you don't have to worry about that engine side of things. Whereas we've seen that can sometimes detract away from what you're doing out on track, especially in the case of Renault and Alpine, in my opinion. So it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be very, very close indeed as to see how this 2025 driver lineup fully figures itself out. As I said, still a quarter of the grid to go. If I had to guess now, and I've slightly changed my opinion on a few, I would say Kimi Antonelli's pretty much guaranteed that Mercedes slot. I think Carlos Sainz is closer to going to Alpine than anywhere else now. I think the move to Mercedes powertrains, I think the fact that Famin's gone, Briatore is back, they're going to have lots of different deals coming in their direction. 2026 is a real turning point for them. I know they're the 8th fastest team now, but I feel like Alpine are maybe a bit closer just because of what they've achieved in the last 2 seasons. They still, have that background of finishing 4th in the Constructors' Championship, finishing 6th in the Constructors' Championship last year, although it's probably going to be 8th this year. And you can say, well, that's a decline in one way or another. 2022, the start of a regulation cycle, was when they were at their best. So maybe they've got that again, 2026, start of a new regulation cycle, they can prove, actually, we're going to jump up a little bit. So I feel like Carlos Sainz maybe is more likely to go to Alpine than anywhere else. I feel like Liam Lawson has to be that seat alongside Yuki Tsunoda still. Will it be Daniel Ricciardo? I just feel like Daniel Ricciardo's kind of done his bit now, if you know what I mean. And maybe should step away from the Formula 1 grid to allow Lawson that spot. Williams and Sauber are the interesting ones because I did think Esteban Ocon was going to be in that Sauber seat. Does that now go to Valtteri Bottas as a kind of 3rd, 4th choice? Because I feel like Carlos Sainz was the 1st choice, Ocon was the 2nd choice. Then it's like, okay, they're going to their 3rd or 4th choice driver. Does it go to Teo Pourchaire? Do they finally give Pourchaire one of those? I think Stake Sauber is a really tricky one. And then Williams, I think, again, they're kind of holding out for Carlos Sainz. They probably won't get him. I think they could also, if Daniel Ricciardo does stay at RB, Liam Lawson would be a great pickup for the Williams team. But again, I feel like Sauber and Williams are now in the most awkward situation. They feel like the hardest seats to fill. And I mean, that's mainly because they're at the bottom of the Constructors' Championship. So it's more difficult to convince drivers of your performance when you've only scored 4 points. And that's because Alex Albon put in a stunning drive for a couple of races. And Stake Sauber, who have been clearly the slowest team throughout the entire season. Actually, they were maybe the 9th fastest team in Bahrain when we started the year because Alpine was so far off the pace. But Alpine have been able to make that step forward and close the gap, even if they are quite far off the Aston Martins, RB and Haas's. I just can't see Stake Sauber getting 9 points. They haven't scored any in 14 races. Why would they score 9 in the last 10 races, especially when their big upgrade package came last time out and it didn't really seem to do much? So that's where I stand on the 2025 driver lineups. I'd love to know your guys' ones, though. Ricciardo isn't done yet, okay? RB replaced Checo mid-season. That's the other thing, isn't it? Daniel Ricciardo could end up in that Red Bull seat. Then Sergio Perez is available. Sergio Perez to Williams. Sergio Perez to Kick. See both of those happening. Be interesting to see Sergio Perez back alongside Nico Hülkenberg. Hope Lawson joins Williams instead of RB. The unconfirmed seat. Your question mark there looks so much like a letter P. Had me fooled at first. This isn't even my graphic. This is the official Formula 1 graphic, so you can blame them. Nigel Mansell to take that. Kimi to Alpine. Not sure. I know that they're going to have the Mercedes engine. Not sure that they'll get hold of a Mercedes driver anytime soon. What do I think of Formula 1 teams possibly signing F1 Academy drivers? Not anytime soon. Like F1 Academy, don't get me wrong, it's been a really good, positive step forward. I don't think there's going to be any Formula 1 Academy drivers on the Formula 1 grid anytime soon. Because you got to think, Formula 1 Academy is almost Formula 3 level cars. And you don't often see drivers jump Formula 3 to Formula 1. Unless you're Max Verstappen, I think. Didn't he do that? And Lance Stroll did that as well, I want to say. Jumped up 2 divisions in one go. I mean, Kimi Antonelli did that, went straight from Formula 4 to Formula 3. Sorry, straight from Formula 4 to Formula 2, but again, not straight into Formula 1 in that way. My only wish is for Alpine to exist this weekend after the past 2 Grand Prix of pain. Yeah, Pierre Gasly has had absolutely atrocious couple of weekends, hasn't he? I feel like it will be a little bit better for him this weekend. Well, hopefully so. The final couple of things to step on before we get into it. Again, this is what I mean. The half an hour was not enough time. We're 3 minutes away from starting. Haven't even talked about Spa yet. There's been so much going on this week just because everyone is getting set up before the summer break. Max Verstappen and various other drivers actually are set to take grid penalties. Max Verstappen obviously being the big one because 10 place penalty for Max Verstappen. He's taken a power unit penalty as he did last year in Spa as well. This is where generally Red Bull do run really quick. So Max Verstappen deciding to take that penalty this weekend again this season. I think it makes sense, but it does mean, obviously, even if he gets pole position today, which I think will be a tough ask, he will only start from 11th place, which will give us a real kind of look at Max Verstappen and how he bounces back from a couple of difficult weekends, really. Especially last weekend, we saw and heard a lot of negativity from Max Verstappen, and actually a lot of negative reporting around Max Verstappen as well, and his hobbies and the fact that he sim races and things like that. I personally didn't really get behind that. I thought if he wants to sim race, he can sim race. That's up to him. We don't talk about the other drivers who maybe go out on the town or go out for dinner the night before a Grand Prix and don't get in until late. It does happen. But because it's Max Verstappen, because he is such a high-profile driver, it became a big talking point. Don't think it needs to be. Yuki Tsunoda also taking a penalty too. There you go. Raheel in the chat letting me know. Yeah, Max Verstappen. Yuki Tsunoda taking a penalty too. Yuki Tsunoda, though, taking like the full power unit. I think it's a 60 place grid penalty for Yuki Tsunoda off the top of my head. So, yeah, starting from the Hungaro ring. Yuki Tsunoda guaranteed to be starting from the back of the pack. But we'll probably see him do at least a couple of laps in qualifying and see where his pace generally lines up with the rest of the pack, just to see where he is at. And then also, finally, I feel like we should say it is a very, very wet out there. Oh, border. It's very, very wet out there in Spa. I think it's, one of those things that we always see when we're at the Belgian Grand Prix. Don't need to remind people of 2021. It was absolutely horrendous. We got to see 2 laps of racing before the Grand Prix was called to a halt. But it is once again wet in Spa as we move into qualifying. Has continued to rain on and off all day. If you joined the team for free practice, it was wet. Lance Stroll in the wall. That's shown here. Red flag because of how slippery it was. So I think we will see qualifying. I think there's going to be a few spins. There's going to be a few accidents. The problem is Spa is such a tricky track and such a long track as well. The longest track on the Formula One calendar. We are going to see quite a lot of incidents, I would imagine, over the course of this qualifying session. So settle yourself in. There's going to be a few red flags, I would imagine, along the way. Get some popcorn. Sit yourself down. Make sure you've got a drink and in for the long haul when it comes to this qualifying session today here in Spa. And let's get into it, shall we? Final thing. As I said, nowhere near enough time. Should have gone live about 20 minutes before I did, but keep to the pattern. Maybe one day I'll be able to go live like an hour before the Grand Prix and we'll get everything done. But Max Verstappen topping the drivers' standings. Lando Norris still second behind. I mean, we didn't even get to touch upon the fact all of the back and forth that there has been this week at the McLaren team, and Lando Norris coming out on Thursday and saying he did the right thing. If anything, he was a little bit stupid not to let Oscar by as soon as, because then he may have been given the go-ahead by the team to race. I don't know if he would have been, but Lando Norris still second in the championship. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc third and fourth still. I think, it's a reminder of where Ferrari were, especially for the first kind of 8 races of the season. Gone downhill a little since then. Oh, Oscar Piastri on the radio. Haas is jumping out of the garage to try and get ahead of the McLaren, and Oscar Piastri not happy about it. We are still waiting. The pit lane still, well, open, but not yet active. Seen Lando Norris there out the front of the queue, wanting to get his lap done first out of everybody. Lewis Hamilton has overtaken Sergio Perez by a point. George Russell now 8 points adrift of Sergio Perez. So Sergio Perez could go into the summer break the 8th car in the top 8. That would be pretty difficult to convince the Red Bull team to keep his seat, wouldn't it? Then we've got Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, and the Aston Martins. Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hülkenberg on equal points. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda starting from the back of the pack. Can Nico Hülkenberg kind of separate himself out into 11th place because of points? We'll have to wait and see. And then also Ollie Behrman still with 6 points. Remember, we could still see Ollie Behrman at some point this season because Kevin Magnussen, 10 penalty points. There is an incident with Kevin Magnussen. He's kind of been on eggshells since Monaco. If there is an incident, he does pick up 2 penalty points. We will see a ban for Kevin Magnussen. So that 6 points for Ollie Behrman might tick up just a little bit throughout the season as it goes. Gasly, Magnussen, Albon, Ocon in that order. Zhou Guanyu, Sargent, Bottas, the 3 yet to score points. Phew. Let's get into qualifying, shall we? Because the cars are out on track. Luckily, nobody is setting any fast laps as of yet. Whoa, we got some bits and pieces coming through. Lofi, thank you so much for becoming a member on the channel. What a legend. If you do want to become a member, it just helps out the channel massively. And obviously, if you read the community tab, I am in between jobs. So any little bit does help. That'd be absolutely amazing. It keeps the lights on, that kind of thing. And Goda with the super chat as well. New to F1. Find the RNC rule kind of weird. I mean, yeah, fair. Wish Max wins only to give fuck you to the penalty. Yeah, I feel like, well, first and foremost, thank you very, very much for the super chat. I think it is a weird rule, but a rule that I do feel is necessary. I do slightly disagree with the wanting Max Verstappen to win just because he needs to prove that penalty is wrong. But I know what you mean. It's a bit of a weird one. But thank you so much, mate. And thank you to all of the new subscriptions to the channel as well. We're heading towards 100,000 subscribers on the channel. And let's talk through the first fast lap of Q1. Then Lando Norris has made his way all the way to the start-finish line and is going to start the first push lap of this qualifying session. Let's see how he does. Intermediate tires across the board, still damp and slippery. Rain expected in just over 2 minutes time, which is around about a lap around here. It's you'll notice that we started 18 minutes on the clock in qualifying. Lando Norris only starting his first flying lap in the 15 minutes 40 second mark. So is a long lap around here in Spa. And a big build-up. And that's why, you have to get the lap in as soon as you possibly can. A red flag around here with 2, 3, 4 minutes left on the clock. And you're going to have nowhere near enough time to get back around again. I want Piastri to win the race on merit without favour by anyone. Shut everyone up. Cool, calm demeanour like Alonso. I feel like Oscar Piastri has gained a big fan base this season. Obviously, actually, I'm not wearing a McLaren top today. Shout out Mr. V. No McLaren top today. The Mr. V merch representing. But, as a McLaren fan, absolutely love Oscar Piastri. And all of the stuff that he does for the team is just wonderful. But I feel like he is gaining momentum as one of those characters on the grid now who is going to have a huge fan base behind him for seasons to come. Oscar Piastri is still one of the youngest drivers on the Formula 1 grid at the moment. Lando Norris, though, let's see what he can do. Lewis Hamilton complaining of grip already. So struggling to get those intermediate tyres into the right window. It's a tough balance with the intermediate tyres because they get too warm. They actually lose a little bit of effectiveness. Whereas you want to cool them down in the water, but you don't want them to be too cold because then they're not sticky enough. Very tough to balance out how the intermediate tyres are going to work around here. There's Lando Norris's 158.8 and 159.8 from Kevin Magnussen, a second off Lando Norris. Nico Hülkenberg then goes a 10th quicker than the McLaren to put himself top. And Oscar Piastri, the first driver into the 157s, a 157.4 from the McLaren man. Lewis Hamilton has started his flying lap, but struggling in the conditions. Max Verstappen has just set the fastest first sector of anybody. Zhou Guanyu with a 2 minutes, 0 seconds, 0.7. Valtteri Bottas with 159.1 for the Stake Sauber team, puts himself 5th. Lance Stroll comes across the line. It's over 2 minutes for Lance Stroll as well. Obviously, had to rebuild that Aston Martin between the sessions after his collision with the barriers. Alex Albon, a 158.9, puts himself 5th. Logan Sargent, though, can't go quicker than the 2 minute mark. Top 10 then setting lap times. Here comes Pierre Gasly. Ooh, that is a very nice lap from Pierre Gasly in the conditions, a 158.1. Remember, Pierre Gasly, pretty quick around here. Was it in the sprint last year that he managed to pick up a podium? So high hopes for Pierre Gasly this weekend if the Alpine team can put it all together. I'm just going to move this slightly there. Thank you, Dylan, for the subscription to the channel, and Fluffy4 as well. Here comes Max Verstappen, though. He's going to set the standard at a 156 dead, 1.4 seconds ahead of Oscar Piastri. We are likely to see quite a spread of lap times just because it is such a long lap around here. You know, you think of qualifying in Austria, for instance, where it's such a short lap and all of the drivers are within like a couple of tenths of each other. Because the lap is so much longer around here, so many tricky long corners throughout the Spa circuit, we are going to maybe see a bit more of a spread. So if somebody is a couple of seconds adrift, that still makes sense. Lewis Hamilton, 1.4 seconds slower than Max Verstappen. George Russell, his teammate, goes 5th fastest overall, split by Charles Leclerc, who's 4th fastest. Ferrari looking to gain a little bit of momentum before the summer break. Lando Norris now 15th fastest overall and on the bubble as everybody finishes their first flying laps. Albon goes quicker once again, a 158.4 from him. That puts Lando Norris into that bottom 5. Remember, for Q1, we are just looking for the bottom 5 drivers to be eliminated from qualifying. The rain doesn't seem to have come, but it's still slippery out there on the track. You see the spray coming off the back of Lando Norris's car as he makes his way through the middle sector of this Spa-Francorchamps track. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine also goes 4th fastest, putting the Alpines 2nd and 4th so far in this qualifying session. Lando Norris, though, finishes that 2nd sector. It's an improvement in both sectors from Norris, but nowhere near the lap time of Max Verstappen as of yet. Carlos Sainz, similar, is improving on his time previous, but is not getting close to Max Verstappen's time at this point. Nico Hülkenberg, currently 16th fastest, trying to get outside of that bottom 5. Logan Sargent, the man who is on the bubble, and is pushed down into the bottom 5 with Lando Norris going 4th fastest overall. So Sargent, Hülkenberg, Joe Stroll, and Bottas, the drivers that need to improve. There goes Carlos Sainz, quicker than his teammate Charles Leclerc by a 10.5. Oh, Nico Hülkenberg with a pretty scruffy middle sector in his Haas. And Oscar Piastri being told on the radio there could be some rain coming. Even with that scruffy middle sector, Hülkenberg gets himself out of the bottom 5, puts Yuki Tsunoda in it. Of course, Yuki Tsunoda with that massive grid penalty, don't imagine will be wanting to push the car too much, just getting a feel for the track out there in Spa. Sergio Perez, yeah, it does have a lot of clean air actually, looking at where he is out on track right now. Just coming around turn 10 and turn 11 on the graphic, running around, a lot of air in front of him, obviously wanting to get out of Q1, which should be a foregone conclusion in a Red Bull. But Sergio Perez has made pretty difficult work of it through this middle stint of the season. Started the season really well up until around about the Miami Grand Prix. Monaco then really went off the bubble in qualifying. That collision in the race as well. Had to go backwards in terms of development because they didn't have the parts ready to go onto the car for Sergio Perez. Has struggled since then. And now looking to try and put himself back into at least discussion of being a Red Bull driver for the future, because at the moment, everyone talking about who is going to replace him once again. Sergio Perez, fastest in the middle sector of anybody, goes second fastest overall. 6/10 off of his teammate. Much better for the Mexican. Goodness me. Oh, Gouda. My payment method doesn't seem to work with recurring payments for membership. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Gouda, for the super chat. Not sure how memberships really work in terms of how they work on your end of things. I do have memberships for some other YouTube channels, but I've never had any issues with it. So maybe worth a Google. Not sure. Sergio Perez, though, gets himself up into 4th place. And you're seeing the track now looking like it is drying up a touch and the lap times tumbling. Charles Leclerc, second fastest. And Daniel Ricciardo then, with his push in towards getting into that Red Bull seat. Daniel Ricciardo, 4th fastest overall. Oscar Piastri goes quickest of anybody. Goes 4.5 temps quicker than Max Verstappen's time. Zhou Guanyu comes across the line, only 14th fastest for him. At the moment, it is Kevin Magnussen, Alex Albon, Nico Hulkenberg, Logan Sargent, and Lance Stroll, the 5 drivers that would be out of qualifying if it ended now. But 6.5 minutes still to go here in Spa. And there is Lance Stroll, currently running 20th in qualifying. Had that collision in free practice 3. Has that just put him off in able to getting the most out of this Aston Martin? Was it here last year, or was it Fernando Alonso that crashed during a wet session in Spa last year? It may have even been both of the Aston Martins. In my mind, it was Fernando Alonso that crashed here in qualifying last season. Carlos Sainz, 13th fastest in his Ferrari at the moment, but is improved in his first sector time. See how clean he can be through this middle sector then. Carlos Sainz just making his way around turn 14 through to turn 15. He got enough to just carry the speed through. Gets into that final sector. He's 7 temps down on Oscar Piastri's time, but once again, an improvement through that middle sector for the Ferrari driver. And you'd imagine the Ferrari quicker through this final sector, almost flat through the entire, even on the intermediate tyres. Finally into the bus stop chicane, a right hand, then a left hand turn very quickly. Once again, power down as soon as you possibly can for Carlos Sainz. He's going to come across the line in the Ferrari and go 4th fastest just behind his teammate and get himself outside of the range of the bottom 5. Piastri then still fastest overall. Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz are top 4. Daniel Ricciardo has come into the pits, and he's the 5th fastest car out on track right now, or was the 5th fastest car out on track. Sergio Perez, 6th fastest in the Red Bull. Fernando Alonso versus Lance Stroll just being flashed out there. Fernando Alonso still 15th fastest overall. Has improved on his first sector time as Lewis Hamilton comes across the line and goes 3rd fastest. Charles Leclerc has just made his way into the pits. Yuki Tsunoda as well. George Russell pitting in the Mercedes car. Does feel like maybe just one last pit. Put on some fresh intermediate tyres if needed. And then, as I said, over 2 minutes around here in terms of a warm-up lap for those tyres. So we're going to see cars coming out fairly swiftly if they do need to improve. Fernando Alonso, though, this might just be it for him. Unless he's got enough fuel in the car to go once more after this. Fernando Alonso comes to the line, is 4th fastest in the Aston Martin. Put himself enough distance between 15th and where he is. Here comes Lance Stroll, his teammate. 1.6 seconds off the pace, but that's good enough for 8th fastest as Pierre Gasly improves to a 1:55.6 behind him. Alex Albon also improving by over a second to Esteban Ocon's time, although Esteban Ocon comes across the line, does improve to go 5th fastest overall. George Russell out of the pits and back out on track. 14th fastest right now for the Mercedes driver. Doesn't want to go back-to-back in terms of Q1 exits. Mercedes driver very frustrated last weekend. Lando Norris, though, the man who was supposedly in the battle for championships, down in 17th place right now. He's got both of the stake cars with him, and there he goes across the line and goes 5th fastest. That does put George Russell down into 16th place. Both of the stake Sauber cars behind, with Bottas and Joe 17th and 18th. Hülkenberg and Logan Sargent, the 5 drivers that need to improve. Here comes Logan Sargent. It's only good enough for 16th place. He's got one more cooldown lap, and then he's got one final chance at a flying lap if he's got enough fuel in that Williams car. You'd hope that they've given him enough of a stretch. Sergio Perez down in 13th place in his Red Bull as well. Ricciardo just ahead of him in 12th. Magnussen and Tsunoda also under pressure in 14th and 15th place also. George Russell on a little bit of a warm-up lap. Seeing the graphic there that is starting to dry out in a few areas around the track. That first sector up the hill looking like it is pretty good for dry tyres. Also towards the final half of the lap, but the rain is expected to continue. There will be areas of the track that are still very slippery indeed. Still intermediate tyres for everybody out on track at the moment. George Russell then starts his final shot at a flying lap. 17th fastest at the moment. Ooh, Zhou Guanyu, Max Verstappen. An incident has been noted. Possible impeding between the two. Don't know which way round it was. Whether it was Max Verstappen getting in the way of Joe or Joe getting in the way of Verstappen. Keep you up to date if I see when that comes through. Max Verstappen looking ominously quick here in Spa. Did think this was going to be one of his best weekends of the year. Usually is. And the Red Bull looking strong here in the mixed conditions. During qualifying, he's top of the tree once again. 6 tenths ahead of Oscar Piastri and 6 tenths ahead of Pierre Gasly, who once again finds himself in the podium places after a stunning drive in the sprint last year. Picked him up a 3rd place finish. George Russell is improving, though. The Mercedes car in the bottom 5. 2 tenths off Max Verstappen's lap time through the middle sector, but much improved from George Russell. 30 seconds left to go in this session. Lewis Hamilton dives out of the way of his teammate. I think Lewis Hamilton is going to be the last man across the line by the looks of things. Sargent, Verstappen kind of coming through as well. Oscar Piastri might just get across the line before the checkered flag. But George Russell up into 3rd place and gets himself away from that bottom 5. Yuki Tsunoda also now down in the bottom 5. Logan Sargent, Bottas, Joe and Hülkenberg joining him. And it was Zhou Guanyu in the way of Max Verstappen. And possible impeding by Zhou Guanyu. Max Verstappen had to get out of it. And a wave of the hand from Verstappen in frustration. Especially if he lost out on a 10th, because Oscar Piastri is now top of the timing sheets. A 10th quicker than Verstappen. Oscar Piastri looking really, really quick here in qualifying already today. When you're looking at Lando Norris being 9 tenths off of his teammate. Pierre Gasly also looking absolutely electric round here. Just up to 2nd place in the Alpine car. A much, much better performance from them this weekend in qualifying. Ocon comes across the line 6th fastest right now too. Hülkenberg has put himself 11th fastest. Fernando Alonso goes 7th. Sergio Perez is that driver at risk, and it's a really scruffy first sector from Sergio Perez. This could be pretty bad showing from Sergio Perez. It was actually a little bit better of a middle sector from Sergio Perez. He's now coming around the final bend. Hülkenberg and Magnussen put themselves 13th and 14th. Sergio Perez has saved it with that second and third sectors gone for fastest 3/10 off Oscar Piastri's time. That puts Magnussen into the bottom 5. Carlos Sainz needs to improve. Lando Norris only goes 11th fastest. Lewis Hamilton also looking to improve on his time. There goes Carlos Sainz up to 5th fastest overall. So Hülkenberg and Magnussen will both be out. So's Yuki Tsunoda as he comes across the start-finish line. Logan Sargent and Zhou Guanyu at the back of the pack, a 19th and 20th place. Ooh, that was a little bit close for some of those bigger teams and bigger drivers. There was a few little scary moments there for a few, but it is the two Haases. Yuki Tsunoda, who was going to take a grid penalty anyway, so won't be too frustrated with 18th place there. Logan Sargent and Zhou Guanyu in 19th and 20th place. They are our bottom 5, and moving into it, see where everybody was. Let's look at the sector timings of the majority, and you can see just how quick that Alpine car is here this weekend. Ocon, fastest of anybody through the first sector in terms of his perfect first sector. And Pierre Gasly also fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Oscar Piastri, fastest overall, but only the quickest driver in the final sector on his perfect lap. You can see where... Ooh. And Sergio Perez on the radio, just not very happy with where the tyre was as he qualified for Q2 in 4th place. So maybe just a little bit of a heads up to the team. We can't really do that again. This, if we want to get through into Q3, wanting the team to just put himself in a little bit better of a window as the cars make their way back around. But as I was saying, Sergio Perez actually pretty quick through the middle sector. That's where he made up for a pretty scruffy first sector, where he did not improve on that final flying lap, but the middle sector really saved him, going even quicker than his teammate Max Verstappen, who was 3rd fastest overall. And then you look at the guys who didn't qualify, Magnussen and Hülkenberg. It was that middle sector that really undid them. The final sector, not too good either. Interesting that Charles Leclerc was so much slower than Carlos Sainz in that final sector as well, possibly running a slightly different setup, because that final sector is very, very high speed, and then obviously the chicane, super low speed. So it'd be interesting to see where Charles Leclerc lost the time to Carlos Sainz. Was it on the flat out part of that sector or the bus stop chicane at the end of it? Then, of course, we got Daniel Ricciardo, did a really good job to get through, was looking quicker than the Red Bulls at one point in his RB. He'll be happy to have outperformed Yuki Tsunoda. He was 9th overall, but you can see really solid in that final sector, 3rd fastest of anybody. Hamilton and Russell 5th fastest in the 1st and 2nd sectors as well. So very interesting. As I said, there was a few drivers in there that I was a little bit worried about getting through in that bottom 5, but just about managing to get into the top 15 through to Q2. It is Bottas, Norris, Hamilton, Albon, and Lance Stroll who will need to improve if they are to make their way into Q3 and for that pole position shootout that we are going to have. Keeping an eye on the weather radar as well. Teams worried about rain incoming. It's been on and off all day here in Spa, as it always seems to be when Formula One comes to visit. And it does feel like there could be some more rain on the way. Oh, yeah, we haven't actually mentioned the Deadpool/Wolverine livery on the Alpine cars. Of course, is it Ryan Reynolds that is a stakeholder in the Alpine team? So makes sense that he was able to convince them to do that. Oh, and there's the mistake from Logan Sargent that put him out of qualifying. And actually nearly touches with Max Verstappen. Wow, Logan Sargent, yeah, scruffy through that first corner. Looking at it on board from Lewis Hamilton's perspective, the Williams goes super deep into turn 1. Max Verstappen trying to set a fast lap, and it gets very, very close to touching with Logan Sargent there. Yeah, Alpine absolutely flying in that Deadpool Wolverine livery. Haven't seen the film as of yet. Did debate going to see it the other day, was just absolutely knackered. I'm doing some charity work over the summer with a few different schools around my local area and helping out some kids, and I'm just absolutely shattered. So did not go and see the Deadpool Wolverine movie as of yet. But if you have seen it, let me know. Is it worth it? Should I go and see it? I'd like to know if it is worth the outlay. Perez survived Q1. Perez back up there again. Just about. Just fourth fastest overall. Doing pretty well indeed. And Alex Albon is going to be the first driver out on track in Q2. 15 minutes this session, but very long warm-up lap here. Over 2 minutes to get around on a warm-up lap. So cars wanting to get out on track right away. George Russell out on track 2. Ocon and Gasly, the Alpines, going side by side. Fernando Alonso making his way out of the pit lane after George Russell. Interesting that Lando Norris has gone fairly early in the running order. Oscar Piastri still waiting in the garage as a lot of the cars making their way down the pit lane. My pole prediction, I'll be honest, before we got into this, I was thinking Max Verstappen would be on pole just because the Red Bull is so quick around Spa usually, and he just kind of clicks with this track often. But going into it with the intermediate tyres, I mean, Pierre Gasly has been absolutely rattling around in that Q1 session. Maybe an Alpine on pole, that would be something a little bit spectacular. But no, Oscar Piastri also looks right up there in terms of pace right now. If it was me, just based off of Q1, I think it's fairly obvious that, you know, Verstappen, Piastri are the ones to kind of keep an eye on right now. But could definitely change over the next few laps. Deadpool and Wolverine, best Marvel movie, second only to the last 2 Avengers movies. Will it ruin your day if I say I haven't seen the Avengers movies? Ooh. I'm sort of very in and out with the whole Marvel franchise. I watch the ones I like. I've seen the Tom Holland Spider-Man films. I've seen the Spider-Man, like, Into the Spider-Verse films. I've seen Iron Man 1. Captain America 2. None of the Thor ones. Are there other ones I'm missing? Oh, I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, but only the first one. It's very hit and miss for me. There's a very scattergun approach to watching the franchise. Here we go then. We are getting underway with some fast laps now. Albon is going to be the man to set the standard in this second qualifying session. Esteban Ocon also making his way up towards turn 5. I would love a Pierre Gasly pole. I mean, it's behind my head now, but there is a Pierre Gasly cap there, a helmet. I am a big Pierre Gasly man. Mainly because I do just like that second Red Bull team for some reason. I really like Yuki Tsunoda as well. George Russell trying to improve. It's a fairly solid first qualifying session from him, but a few scruffy corners here and there. At least has improved on his qualifying position from Hungary. Oscar Piastri now starting his flying lap with Max Verstappen behind as well. So that'll be an interesting pair to watch. But Alex Albon is going to, as I say, set the standard for this qualifying session too. Just coming around the bus stop through 18 and 19 and down towards the start-finish line. It's a 154.7, so that is confirmation that the track is continuing to just heat up a little bit, get quicker and quicker for the cars out there. Esteban Ocon, 154.7 as well, but just 0.06 of a second off Pierre Gasly, then 0.3 off Albon's time. George Russell slots into the middle, 2.5 off the Williams. Lando Norris has just gone quickest of anybody through the middle sector. Fernando Alonso is going to finish his fast lap before the McLaren, though. Let's see where Fernando Alonso slots himself in. Third fastest overall. Feel like Lando Norris is about to just put himself top of the tree. There it is, a 154.4 from the McLaren. Fastest in the middle sector of anybody so far today. Charles Leclerc, 0.9 off the pace. Hamilton, 0.4 off, goes 5th fastest overall. Here comes Carlos Sainz as well. It's 6th fastest for Sainz. Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas are going to be next. Ricciardo, 4th fastest from Daniel Ricciardo, 3.5 off Lando Norris's time. Obviously, his old teammate there. Valtteri Bottas only good enough for 11th fastest and slowest of anybody that's completed a lap so far. Sergio Perez comes across the line. 4th fastest for Perez, just ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Lance Stroll then comes across the line. He goes slowest of anybody so far. But here's the two I was most interested in. Oscar Piastri goes only 3rd fastest. And Max Verstappen then is going to be the last man across the line. Fastest in the middle sector of anybody. Is he going to go to the top of the timing sheets? Yes. Max Verstappen, 0.6 of a second quicker than Lando Norris. So it is Verstappen, Norris, Albon, our top 3. Oscar Piastri in 4th place. Maybe Alex Albon on for a shout at pole position. All of a sudden, mixing it up. I was expecting those 3, Verstappen, Norris, Piastri to be up there in the top 4. Would not have bet on Alex Albon being the 4th name amongst them. We've got Ocon just behind him, 5th place. Perez, Ricciardo, Alonso, Hamilton, and Sainz are top 10 right now. The drivers that need to improve, Russell, Gasly, Leclerc, Bottas, and Stroll are the 5 that would be out of Q2 were it to end now. But obviously, still a long way to go. 8 minutes. George Russell wanting a fresh set of intermediate tyres coming into the pits. And back out again. Here is George Russell just coming down the pit lane with 8 minutes to go in this Q2 session. And he is 11th fastest right now. He was a second off the pace. Pretty poor from George Russell once again in qualifying. Better than last weekend at least, but still not looking like the top 10 is guaranteed. Here comes Charles Leclerc for a fresh set of boots as well. Lewis Hamilton with a fresh set of intermediate tyres onto his car. Hamilton actually tries to get past Charles Leclerc in the pit lane. Not sure that the Ferrari is going to allow that to happen. Hamilton might just have to do his outlap behind the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Doesn't want to. Is right underneath the rear wing of the Ferrari is the Mercedes driver. Some battling going on between these two. Obviously, teammates next year at Ferrari, and already during qualifying, we're starting to see some bickering between them. Lovely stuff between Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton as they battle for position. Pierre Gasly we're now on board with Wolverine helmet for this weekend. It's been a pretty poor first sector from Pierre Gasly. Hasn't improved on his previous first sector, and a scruffy middle sector from Gasly as well. You wonder, where is Gasly in terms of those intermediate tyres? Are they were fresh on at the beginning of this session? Just looks like those rear tyres are not quite in the window. Obviously, as the track is developing, as the track is maybe drying out a touch, possibly that Alpine car just not being as competitive. They need it a little bit damper. And that might actually come towards them, as Sergio Perez saying it's starting to rain a little bit harder through some of those sectors. Fernando Alonso, scruffy middle sector for the Spaniard. 8th fastest overall right now, just coming through the final sector. Fernando Alonso hits turn 18. Tough right-hander, trying to carry as much speed as you can through the left-hander, but a really slow chicane at the end. And then across the line comes Fernando Alonso. Stays 8th fastest overall. The rain is now coming, and it does make you wonder whether it's a little bit too late for those guys that do need to improve. George Russell, though, just gone purple in the first sector, so I'll take that back. George Russell going out there on a fresh set of intermediate tyres and wanting to push that Mercedes into Q3. Join his teammate Lewis Hamilton, who's currently only 9th fastest. Look at the 2 Mercedes and the 2 Ferraris, both under pressure, one of each in the bottom 5 as it stands right now. Oh, George Russell absolutely ripping this Mercedes car around, finding every single little bit of grip that he's got. So slippery out there in Spa. Thank you very much for the subscriptions. Appreciate that. Joe and Biru. Ferrari P10 and P13 is what I mean. The Ferraris and the Mercedes cars really, really need to improve. Doesn't help that Alex Albon and the Williams absolutely flying. The Alpine seems to be good under Ocon at the moment. You know, you've got Daniel Ricciardo in the top 10 as well. There's a lot of drivers in that top 10 that we don't normally see. And then even the likes of Hülkenberg and Tsunoda, who have been the drivers that we've seen fairly regularly outside of the big teams, are out of qualifying as well. So it's going to be a bit of a mix-up on the grid right now. There is George Russell improving and going 4th fastest. Alex Albon in the pit lane. So is Ocon and Gasly as well. Ocon, though, now on an outlap. Sergio Perez also looking to improve, is on an outlap. Also, Bottas and Stroll are out on track. Charles Leclerc better through the first sector and better through the middle sector as well, Charles Leclerc. So this is going to be much better from the Ferrari man. It's how much better into the top 10 can he get? Lewis Hamilton goes just behind his teammate, George Russell. Almost identical times in the Mercedes cars. 0.02 of a second separate them. Charles Leclerc then goes 3rd fastest of anybody. Gets in front of the Williams of Alex Albon. Carlos Sainz wrestling that Ferrari car round the final sector. Gets into the 4th fastest spot. That puts Daniel Ricciardo, Fernando Alonso, and Pierre Gasly down into the bottom 5. Gasly, Bottas, and Stroll looking to improve. Fernando Alonso also on an outlap. Ricciardo already on his flying. Oh, and Piastri dips his rear left tyre into the gravel. Looking to improve on 8th place. Piastri was a scruffy first sector from the Australian. Of course, one last time out in Hungary. Will want to go back-to-back if possible. Imagine McLaren back-to-back victories in a McLaren car. Unheard of in this era of Formula 1. But Oscar Piastri, round the final couple of corners, goes 2nd fastest overall. And even with a tyre dipped into the gravel, only 3/10 off Max Verstappen's top time. Daniel Ricciardo, a little bit slower through the middle sector than he has been on previous laps. Made up for it possibly in that first sector where he was quicker. Coming around the final couple of corners and goes 6th fastest overall. So Alex Albon dropped to 7th place. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton once again getting perilously close to 11th place in the standings. And Sergio Perez is right there. Perez in 11th. 9.5 tenths off of his teammate, and possibly another drop in qualifying for the Mexican driver. He's coming around turn 11 right now, trying to improve. Sergio Perez, first sector, okay, but not an improvement for the Mexican. Just having a little look as he comes around what his second sector time is going to be. A 51.3 through the middle sector is a little bit of an improvement and a bit better than Esteban Ocon's time as well. So Sergio Perez should be okay. He was only 0.06 of a second off Esteban Ocon's current time and is improving through that middle sector quite substantially. Just needs a good final sector to get himself through. Will be interesting though, as he will push Russell and Hamilton that step closer to the bottom 5. and goes 4th fastest overall, puts Russell 9th, Hamilton 10th. Does put both of the Alpine cars into the bottom 5, as we were just talking about a possibility of an Alpine podium. Esteban Ocon, though, putting those fears into good use. He's gone fastest of anybody through the first sector as Esteban Ocon, just checking the timing sheets there. Lance Stroll doesn't really improve and goes 15th fastest overall, but Esteban Ocon, fastest of anybody through the first sector. A fairly decent and improved middle sector from Esteban Ocon as well. Pierre Gasly, his teammate, following behind and also going fairly quick through the first couple of sectors. Goes across the start-finish line, and it's Esteban Ocon goes quicker than Sergio Perez. Goes 4th fastest overall. Where's Pierre Gasly going to be able to slot in? He goes 7th fastest and takes the checkered flag. Max Verstappen is going to be next across the start-finish line. Already fastest of anybody and stays there. Doesn't improve on his time, though, Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton has just gone quickest of anybody through the middle sector. Both of the Mercedes drivers needing to improve. George Russell does. Goes 2nd fastest overall. That puts Daniel Ricciardo in a real awkward position. Daniel Ricciardo's already come across the start-finish line, so Lewis Hamilton looking to knock out the RB driver. Fernando Alonso and Alex Albon also on fast laps right now. Bottas and Stroll down in 14th and 15th place. Here comes Lewis Hamilton, 12th up to 2nd, and puts Daniel Ricciardo out of qualifying 2. It's Carlos Sainz now, the man on 10th. Fernando Alonso knocks out the other Spaniard. Carlos Sainz now down in the bottom 5, and Alex Albon comes across the line to put Pierre Gasly out of qualifying. Carlos Sainz is on a lap. Don't worry, Ferrari fans. He's got a chance to save himself here. Charles Leclerc then goes 5th fastest. So it is Alex Albon, the man to beat for Carlos Sainz. Can he do it? Yes. Goes 4th fastest overall and puts Alex Albon into the bottom 5. Valtteri Bottas crosses the line. Doesn't improve. Well, improves on his time, but doesn't improve on his position. He stays 14th. And again, another shaky qualifying session for the Mercedes drivers, the Ferrari drivers. They left it very late. Sergio Perez just sneaking through in 10th spot. Not where the Mexican really wants to be, but a Q3 nonetheless for Sergio Perez as he looks to prove he is worthy of that Red Bull seat beyond the summer break. Alex Albon is 11th, Pierre Gasly 12th, Daniel Ricciardo 13th, Valtteri Bottas 14th, and Lance Stroll will start in 15th place. They join the other 5 drivers to drop out in Q1. It was Nico Hülkenberg in 16th, Kevin Magnussen 17th, Yuki Tsunoda was 18th fastest, Logan Sargent 19th, and Zhou Guanyu 20th. Of course, remember, there are a few grid place penalties to play out this weekend. So, for instance, Max Verstappen fastest overall right now, but he has got a 10-place grid penalty. So even if he does get pole, he will start from 11th place. Yuki Tsunoda will start from the back of the pack, even though he qualified in 18th as the 18th fastest driver. Why do they only do 1 push lap at VCARB? Yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Felt like they could have gone a little bit longer with Daniel Ricciardo. Maybe that was Daniel Ricciardo's choice. Maybe it's the team's choice. I have to kind of wait and see. It's always a bit 50-50 when it comes to qualifying strategies, because the driver does have quite a bit of input into what they would like to do, but then they also have to look at whether or not it's going to rain, whether or not they're going to swap onto the intermediate tires for the soft tires maybe, but haven't seen anybody gamble on a set of slicks yet, although the track has been evolving and devolving as we've seen rain and then dry and then a little bit of rain once again, spitter spatter throughout the Grand Prix weekend, throughout the qualifying weekend. Yeah, Alex Albon, 0.003 of a second, the difference there. Sergio Perez wiping away the sweat from his brow. He was 0.633 off Max Verstappen's time. Alex Albon 0.636 is the difference there in qualifying. Pierre Gasly as well, I think, will be a little bit frustrated. As I said before, was here on the podium during the sprint race last year in Spa. but not able to do it this time around. Starts 12th overall. And I don't know. Esteban Ocon obviously getting that little bit more out of the car. Have to have a little look at Pierre Gasly's onboard to see where that 10th was lost, because he is pretty quick around here. Maybe it was just a little bit quicker, that Alpine car, when the track was that little bit wetter on the intermediate tyre. At least Norris is through. Track half dry, half wet. Exactly. It's so tricky to judge right now, isn't it? And various areas actually getting wetter because of the rain that is coming, but also areas that aren't getting rained upon. It's such a big track here in Spa that you can have different weather in different corners. And Alex Albon gets the well done from James Vowles. Knows how excruciatingly close they were to a top 10 start. But actually, Alex Albon starting in 11th place. I don't think he'd be too disheartened by that. See, Max Verstappen will mean that that is a top 10 start for Alex Albon, wherever he ends up qualifying. So Alex Albon will start in the point scoring places. Scored points twice already for Williams this year. 2 9th place finishes. Looking to add one final point scoring place before we go into the summer break. Do I think Max's car upgrade would help him dominate for the rest of the season? I don't think dominate. I think it is just getting too close between the likes of Red Bull, McLaren, even Mercedes kind of joining that conversation. I don't think it's going to be the Max Verstappen show in the way that it was last season. I think that the other teams have caught up enough. And also the fact that, you know, Red Bull are getting towards the point where there's not really much more to gain. We are getting towards the end of this regulation cycle. That have done a lot of upgrading over the course of the 3 years that we've had these ground effect cars, and they're probably finding that limit of what they really have. Let's go into Q3 then. 12 minutes on the clock, but we're not going to see fast laps for another couple of minutes, as Lewis Hamilton looks like he's going to try and be the first man out on track. 10-second or 10-place grid penalty. It's a 10-place grid penalty for Max Verstappen. Why do I think the RB20 is not as good as the RB19? It's a little bit of a misnomer. The RB20 is quicker. Objectively, the RB20 is a quicker car. Everyone else has just caught up, is the thing. McLaren have gotten closer. Mercedes have gotten closer. The point at which the Red Bull dominance kind of switched, if you look at it, was that Miami Grand Prix weekend, moving into Imola as well. You then got where the McLaren team brought their upgrades. We had the big upgrade from, well, there hasn't really been a massive upgrade from Mercedes this year, but we've seen those iterative upgrades finally click for the Mercedes car from kind of Canada onwards. And I think it's just everyone else has closed the gap. So objectively, Red Bull are quicker than they were last year. The rest of the field is just closer to them. And therefore, it doesn't look like that dominant car that we had before. But it is quicker. So it's kind of a bit of a weird one. As much as you can move forwards in Formula One, if someone else moves forwards more, they're going to catch up to you. That's what we've seen. You see how uncomfortable Lando Norris is in turn 1? I didn't, actually. I might have a little look as he comes around in Q3. It is Lewis Hamilton, as I mentioned before, the first man out on track. George Russell behind him. Oscar Piastri is going to be third across the start-finish line, followed by Esteban Ocon just behind in 4th. And we've got Lando Norris in the middle of that pack. He's going to be the 5th driver to set his fast lap time. Alonso, Sainz, and Leclerc just coming towards the end of the pit lane. Wonder which of the Red Bulls will come out first. Sergio Perez opting to get out on track first. So we're just waiting for Max Verstappen to join the track. Intermediate tyres, still the call of the day. There's just too many little spots of rain here and there, isn't there? For the drivers to really be able to commit to the slick tyres. Even though there are areas of the track where I would say, you know, the amount of spray coming off the intermediate tyres probably enough where you could get away with some slicks. There's also some areas they come through and you're like, that is a wet strip. Ocon in Q3, yeah, absolutely flew. The Alpine has looked very, very good in these kind of mixed conditions here in Spa. To be fair, as it's gotten drier, the Alpine car has looked kind of less competitive as we've gone through. So Esteban Ocon might struggle here in this final session. But I mean, to be fair, just starting in the top 10 in an Alpine when they are the 8th fastest team in Formula 1 right now is very, very impressive. Lewis Hamilton then is going to get us underway. Just under 10 minutes to go in this qualifying 3 session. Come around turn 1. George Russell, his teammate, following on behind. Piastri, Ocon, Norris will come across the line next. Alonso, Sainz and Leclerc, all very close to one another actually, as they come through turn 16 through to 17. I'm sure they'll spread out a touch, the two Spaniards side by side, but Max Verstappen is going to be the last man across the start-finish line. So not until Max Verstappen comes across the start-finish line can we really gauge where everybody really is in terms of qualifying. What does the diagonal line through the tyres mean? It means there is a used set of tyres. So you'll see how they have 5 laps on them as opposed to the fresh sets of tyres, which only have 1 lap on them. Or in Max Verstappen's case, 0, because he has not yet finished his warm-up lap. How is Alpine suddenly so quick? They had P20, P18 in Hungary. Not sure, actually. I haven't looked whether they brought any big upgrade packages to this weekend. I don't think so. Might just be track dependent in the fact that they just suit this track a little bit more. And as I said, they looked a lot quicker in those kind of mixed intermediate tire conditions where it was that little bit kind of on the wetter side of the intermediate tire running. So might be something in that as well, where the intermediate tires do just click that little bit better for the current setup that they have got. But as I said, Lewis Hamilton then first across the start-finish line, a 1 minute 54 dead from him. Where's George Russell going to slot in? It is slower than his teammate by 0.2 of a second. Oscar Piastri, fastest middle sector of anybody so far. He's going to come across the line. Oh, it's only second fastest. 16 thousandths of a second. Here comes Esteban Ocon. And there you go. 0.8 down off Lewis Hamilton. Said Ocon, not sure is going to be right up there in this session. Lando Norris, no, only 2.5 tenths off. Still, 4th fastest for Lando Norris. We expected maybe a little bit more from Lando. Usually goes pretty well here in Spa. Fernando Alonso comes across the line, goes 5th fastest overall. He's 7 tenths off Lewis Hamilton's lap time. Carlos Sainz, 4 tenths off the pace, goes 5th fastest in his Ferrari. Charles Leclerc then coming around the final corner and across the start-finish line, goes 6th fastest behind his teammate, Carlos Sainz. Here comes Sergio Perez, goes quickest of anybody. Sergio Perez, 2.5 tenths quicker than Lewis Hamilton. Sets the provisional pole time, but Max Verstappen was quickest of anybody through the middle sector and is quickest of anybody 6 tenths ahead of his teammate. Wow. Goodness gracious me. That is absolutely stunning for Max Verstappen. Is that a fresh set of tyres on Max Verstappen's? It was a used set of tyres on Sergio Perez's car. The Red Bull looking really, really good here. And Max Verstappen even made a mistake. Got a little bit out of shape and nearly into the gravel as well. Oscar Piastri on board. Oh, and a little mistake from Oscar Piastri as well. Oh, a couple of little mistakes in a row from Oscar Piastri through the middle sector. Just about kept his McLaren car out of the... No, did get into the gravel. That rear right tyre of Oscar Piastri just dipping into the gravel. The rain now continuing to fall. That is a very impressive time from Sergio Perez. I'll give him that. A used set of intermediate tyres. Hamilton, Piastri, Russell, Norris, all on fresh sets of intermediate tyres. See, the fresher the set of tyres, the better they should be. But Sergio Perez, 2 tenths quicker than Hamilton. Wow. Obviously, 6 tenths off his teammate. Max Verstappen take a bow, but Sergio Perez, very impressive indeed. Then Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz were both on a used set of intermediate tyres. So hopefully more to come from the Ferraris. At the moment, though, this would be our grid. Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton starting in the podium positions. Oscar Piastri joining Hamilton on the second row in 4th spot. George Russell and Lando Norris would be 5th and 6th. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc 7th and 8th. Fernando Alonso 9th. Esteban Ocon starting in 10th place. Obviously, remember, Max Verstappen does have a 10-place grid penalty, so would drop all the way to the back of this top 10. Starts in 11th position, pushing Alex Albon into the point-scoring places. And I think Max Verstappen just showing that Red Bull car really does have some pace this weekend. Sergio Perez, though, if he can stay there, that would mean he starts on pole position, by the way. So Sergio Perez could start at the front of the pack tomorrow. It's a very short run down towards turn 1 as well. I think that's underplayed here in Spa. It's very difficult to make an overtaking maneuver down towards turn 1 straight away off the beginning. So Sergio Perez could be in a really, really good place. Hamilton, Piastri and Russell have continued on their fast laps, but it's sort of poor first sectors from all of them, really not improving on their times. Much better from Hamilton through the middle sector. And Oscar Piastri not really looking that far better this lap either. Lewis Hamilton, though, looking to improve. Can he at least gain on Sergio Perez in front of him? It's going to be very, very close. Nope, a 153.8 from Lewis Hamilton. Not quite able to jump Sergio Perez. 0.07 of a second between 2nd and 3rd place. Piastri comes across the line, doesn't improve. George Russell stays 5th fastest. And nobody really improving on these second runs on these tyres. Lando Norris comes across the start-finish line, does improve, goes ahead of his teammate into 4th spot. But it's still the 2 Red Bulls at the top. Lewis Hamilton 3rd. Norris and Piastri 4th and 5th. George Russell 6th. Here comes Max Verstappen once again. Remember, does have a 10-place grid penalty, the Dutchman. So Max Verstappen coming out just to show the pace of the Red Bull once again. Already 6.5 tenths quicker than the nearest non-Red Bull car. Well, 6 tenths quicker than the nearest Red Bull car anyway. Absolutely flying. Max Verstappen. Here comes Sergio Perez. And Perez on another set of used intermediate tyres. Does he not have a fresh set? Sergio Perez maybe doesn't have a fresh set of intermediate tyres for this final qualifying session. Frustrating, I guess. Needed to use them up to actually guarantee himself a spot in Q3. Doesn't have a fresh set to use in Q3, but a slightly fresher set than he used last time around. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, a new set of intermediate tyres for them. Hamilton, Norris, Piastri, Russell still on that same set of intermediate tyres they were at the beginning of this session. Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon on used set of intermediates. Q3, a minute and a half left to go. Drivers coming around on their final warm-up preparation laps. A little bit of traffic kind of getting in the way of Max Verstappen's time. He's trying to jump in front of Fernando Alonso right now. Lewis Hamilton also trying to get in front of a McLaren. Is it Oscar Piastri in front of Hamilton? Yeah, it is. So Verstappen, Alonso, Piastri, Hamilton just coming around the final sector all together. Russell then behind his teammate as well. Perez and Norris coming out to try and improve. See if everybody gets across the start-finish line in time. The Ferraris, though, already going for their flying laps. Carlos Sainz does not improve in the first sector compared to his previous time. Charles Leclerc is a little bit quicker through the first sector than his teammate and almost matches Max Verstappen. Rain is possibly increasing around the circuit. What Lando Norris is told. Piastri across the start-finish line. George Russell, Perez, and Norris just trying to get across the line before the checkered flag. How long have they got? 20 seconds or so. Lando Norris then looks like he's going to be the last man to set a lap time. And he is indeed, with 10 seconds left to go across the start-finish line. Esteban Ocon just coming around turn 19. We'll take the checkered flag, I would imagine. Oh, no, it might be close, actually. Might just get across the line before the checkered flag. Sure, did Ocon get across the line? Doesn't really matter, does it? Ocon's not going to be right up there. Let's have a little look then. Carlos Sainz is going to be first across the start-finish line here. 19 is the corner he's currently on. Comes around it. And the Spaniard, not that much better. Stays only 7th fastest. Charles Leclerc. Let's see what he can do. Get any closer in the Ferrari? Yes, there's 2nd fastest for Charles Leclerc on the front row of the grid. And that would put him on pole position right now because Max Verstappen with that 10th-place penalty. Verstappen actually a little bit scruffy through the middle sector, but still on provisional pole right now. Wants to stay there so that he will start from 11th place tomorrow. Verstappen now coming through 18 and 19. That bus stop chicane. And has Max Verstappen improved? No. Verstappen goes 0.04 of a second slower than his previous time. But he's 0.6 of a second quicker than Charles Leclerc still. Sergio Perez is the one to keep an eye on. George Russell, I think, has come into the pits by the looks of things. Oh, no, it's Lewis Hamilton into the pits. No, Russell into the pits as well. Piastri is taking the checkered flag, stays 6th fastest. Sergio Perez will not improve. He'll start in 2nd place. And Red Bull congratulate themselves with Max Verstappen taking pole. It's actually going to be Charles Leclerc who starts at the front of the pack. What a prediction from me. Just saying, I did put him on the thumbnail. I thought Ferrari were going to have a good qualifying. Was not expecting pole position, I'm going to be honest with you. Charles Leclerc starting on top spot tomorrow. Sergio Perez behind in 2nd. Hamilton and Norris will be on the 2nd row of the grid. Piastri and Russell behind on the 3rd row. An all Spaniard 4th row of the grid. Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso side by side. And it will be Esteban Ocon and Alex Albon starting in the points scoring places. Then we've got Max Verstappen, who will start in 11th spot after that 10th-place penalty, with Pierre Gasly just behind him. Daniel Ricciardo 13th, Valtteri Bottas 14th, Lance Stroll 15th, Hülkenberg and Magnussen were 16th and 17th. The two Haas's dropping out in Q1. Yuki Tsunoda will start from the back of the pack, even though he qualified in 18th here. Logan Sargent 19th and Zhou Guanyu 20th. Goodness me. I thought there was a little bit of a mix there. Was not expecting Charles Leclerc to be quickest. Was not expecting Sergio Perez to be 2nd quickest. Well, I say quickest and 2nd quickest. Max Verstappen was clearly the fastest driver out on track. But with that 10th-place penalty, what I mean is starting 1st and 2nd rather than quickest and 2nd quickest, don't I? It's another pole position for Max Verstappen in the history books. He will be starting from 10th place. Goodness me. Well, I was expecting a couple of red flags, maybe a few bits and pieces to occur, but everyone kept it fairly clean there in qualifying. Hopefully, it'll be similar in the race tomorrow, even with the mixed conditions. Looking like it is going to rain even more overnight here in Spa, and therefore a damp race tomorrow morning. If you could hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. We are back live once again for the Belgian Grand Prix tomorrow. Be very, very interesting to see what that man Max Verstappen can do moving into the Grand Prix, starting from 11th place. Can he get past Albon and Ocon fairly easily? He's then got two Spaniards to try and get past, and then the real meat of it. and you get past Russell, Piastri, Norris, Hamilton. It's gonna be pretty tight. It's gonna be a very, very interesting race. And I hope that you will join us for it. Thank you so much again. Thank you for all of the super chats and the memberships and the new subscribers as well. And I will see you tomorrow. Shout out Mr. V's merch. If you like this top, he's got more tops. If you like this hat, he's got more hats. Shout out Mr. V. Thank you guys. See you next time.